Good morning, evening, afternoon, everybody. This is Carrie Getz with another edition of our podcast series, Careers for Women Trades and Vets in Tech and Data Centers. And we're talking today to Molly Rose, who is doing some work to help get veteran spouses jobs and those kind of things, which, of course, veterans are a big cause of mine. So, Molly Rose, welcome. Introduce yourself. Tell everybody what you do.
Hi, Carrie. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Molly Rose, as you said. I'm a military spouse, now a reserve spouse, and I help military spouses get work remote jobs through the trade of being a virtual assistant. So I train and place them to be in the virtual assistant space and work remote, and I love it.
For those of people that don't know exactly what a virtual assistant does and hasn't been lambasted on LinkedIn with 700 people offering to be theirs, maybe tell
Yes.
everybody a little bit about what that encompasses. What is a virtual assistant? What kind of jobs can they expect? What does that remote life look like?
Yeah.
And things like that.
Yeah. So back before we were attached to our computers, we worked in an office. We see executive assistants all the time working at the front desk or managing a busy CEO's schedule. And now in the digital age, we have all of that can be done virtually and then some. As online businesses are growing at a rapid speed, they all need support. And the first person that entrepreneurs and small business owners tend to hire is a virtual assistant, just that right hand person that can kind of do a bit of everything. And those things include helping with email management, scheduling, travel booking, updating blogs on a website or simple website updates, doing social media marketing, engaging on Facebook or LinkedIn, as you mentioned, helping with a personal brand or a business brand, helping book public speakers, helping authors. It goes on and on, the amount of things that virtual assistants are able to do. And as they get more experience, their skill set grows and grows. But in a general sense, it's that general admin role that virtual assistants are able to play virtually. And when I say virtually, I mean you can work anywhere you want, anytime you want. I spent several months overseas when my husband was deployed, working from hostels in Paris and Prague and Germany while I was working virtually for clients that were in the States. So it's really cool in that aspect. And it is really great career, not only for spouses of those that travel a lot, such as the military, but also stay at home moms because it can be super flexible.
Talk a little bit about this push for people going back to the office, right? There's Elon Musk came out with something the other day. Several companies have wanting people to come back to the office. Talk a little bit about what's different from a remote standpoint and what to do if you want to stay remote and how those relationships work and how they differ a little bit from in person.
Yes, absolutely. So certainly going in the office, especially when you're trying to kind of go up the ranks in a corporation, showing up in an office is really, really important. I listen to a lot of podcasts where they're arguing that. I think this assistant role can be truly done from anywhere, and companies and business owners are finding it really beneficial because they can do what we call fractional employment, where they're able to hire a virtual assistant for say 10 hours a week and they're super, super productive because we're really good at what we do versus having a 40-hour a week employee that has to come into the office. So it's really advantageous for that. And I truly believe, unless you're there bringing in people for direct meetings or doing a lot of in-person events, everything that can be done in an office can also be done virtually. And we're seeing that proven time and time again.
And how does that work with different time schedules? So you mentioned that you were doing work
Mm-hmm.
from hostels in Paris and all that
Mm-hmm.
for companies in the US. Clearly there's a time difference for people that, kind of forget that.
Yeah.
Talk about how that works, setting up different time zones. How do you pick the days and times that you're going to work and how that sorts out a little bit?
Yeah. So, one of the things we do with our students immediately is kind of helping them design work around their life, not life around their work, which is contrary to the way corporate America has put us all into this fishbowl these days. So, if you're someone that wants to work between 9 and 2 o'clock during the day, that's when kids are in school. It happens all the time. We would make sure that that is really crystal clear to the clients that you're interviewing with. So you're not taking on tasks where you have to be on a 4 p.m. call every day. So it's really just kind of understanding what you need and then communicating that up front. And 9 times out of 10, it just works out. There are a handful of times where clients come in and they're like, oh no, I need this specific thing, or I need a 40-hour a week virtual assistant. And we just navigate through that. But time zones can be at play. If you're on the East Coast and you have a client on the Pacific Coast that needs you at 8 a.m., or vice versa, Pacific, that needs you at 8 a.m. Eastern, are you willing to get up at 5 in the morning? Is that something you want to do? Otherwise, you can say no to it. But it seems like things can be done in general at any time of day. So it just works out. A lot of our virtual assistants work at night or very, very early in the morning because a lot of it's project based. It doesn't matter when the work gets done.
I think that's pretty awesome. Let's touch a little bit on training, and because I know that women as a whole tend to only apply for a job if they feel like they're 100% qualified. And we know that some of these jobs require some rather ridiculous qualifications, and some people have really silly expectations about what's required to do these roles. Touch a little bit on some of the transferable skills and skills that you think that women bring to the table, or spouses, period, can bring to the table from a military atmosphere, because clearly being a military spouse is very different than being a civilian spouse. And help listeners understand how they fit and what skills make them feel comfortable with this whole scenario.
Yeah, it's a great question. Military spouses, as we know, come from all walks of life. And I've seen that even within our virtual assistant grad group. Some are physician's assistants, seriously, that are now virtual assistants. It makes me crazy that they would do that, but I think it's great just to show the flexibility that we have. Some have high school degrees, some can speak Spanish, some don't. It's all across the board, and there really is a place for everyone in this role, because what the client needs is also so different. Some want analytical, structured, very straightforward, task-driven people, and others want the more creative type. And being a military spouse, we're able to do those things well, at least in the community that I came from. We have all these spouse programs that we're invited to be a part of, and events that we can plan, or groups that we can help foster within the military community that we have at hand. So it's that mixed with our background that I think kind of makes it all come together really well. I think also we all have past careers or past education that we can bring into the role that is really dynamic. I think military specific, though, being able to communicate and just jump into a new environment, to a new person, is something that we all do really, really well, or most of us, I shouldn't say we all, or we strive to do very, very well, and we're just forced to do that. So that lends really well. And I see that within our military graduates. They just adapt really well and get to know the person, and our clients are really, really happy with that.
And then what about training? What kind of training do you guys afford, and how does that, so if somebody started out today, do you guys work with the Chamber of Commerce program for spouses for some of that training? How do you get people trained up? How do you match them with customers? Talk about what that whole process looks like.
Yeah. So I have a training academy that I have built over the past 8 years, and it's evolved as technology has come into play. And it's twofold. We have a business program, because you truly are running your own business as an independent contractor, as a virtual assistant. So it teaches you, what are your service offerings? How are you going to market? What's your pricing? How do you run your back office, your billing, your bookkeeping, your LLC? How do you communicate effectively and onboard with clients? Helps you learn how to build a team if you start to scale and get bigger, or how do you outsource things you don't know how to do. So we cover soup to nuts, everything of the business side of running a virtual assistant business. And then there's the tech side, the actual skill sets that you need to know. And we teach 8 core competencies within that, and then some. And this is ever changing, because as technology continues to change, we're constantly recreating the videos and making sure that the tutorials are up to date. But these are things kind of that I mentioned already about how to master a really good inbox. Inbox zero is a buzzword that's going around in our industry. So teaching virtual assistants to manage that, be really great at scheduling, travel booking, social media, newsletter management, research and managing the KPIs of a business, which are the performance indicators of a business, and helping with marketing assets. Those are the big core ones that we do. Oh, and basic bookkeeping. So we
And
teach
how long
that.
is the training? What does that entail? I mean, obviously, it's going to have to be tailored to different people depending on what
Yeah.
skills they bring to the table already and what skills they need. But what does that process look like?
Yeah, so the training is intended to be across 6 weeks, although our virtual assistants seem to get in there and want to learn at least the business side as quickly as possible. So they blitz through it in a week, knowing that they can come back when they need to apply to write a proposal or deliver that contract with their first client. So that's a really good way to do it. And then the tech side, I recommend doing one thing per week that's new to you. And so, anywhere from a month to 6 weeks to really be up to speed and then continue to grow. So every 2 weeks or every week, adding in a new skill set, whether it's something that I teach or YouTube is an amazing resource for us when you don't know something.
I think that probably a significant portion of this is communication, right? You have to be able to communicate with whoever you're working for. And clearly, you might not always be working for the same person. You might be working for a few different people. Talk a little bit about the organizational skills and what you think are some tools that you found helpful that other people that are considering this might want to look into.
Yeah, great question. Virtual assistants tend to juggle 3 to 5 clients at a time, which can be a lot if you're not organized. So that's something we address pretty quickly, having those systems in place. And that looks like, when are you available? For starters, we kind of talked about that. But then how can a client communicate with you? What are the channels of communication? And where I see that break down the most is when virtual assistants just say, hey, just reach out whenever, it's all good. Well, then you're going to get text messages at 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. And it just gets really frustrating and frazzled. And that's no fault to the client. It's just when it's on their mind, oh, I need to tell Molly to do this thing. So what I recommend is having 3 channels of communication. One is a project management tool. I use something called Asana, which is great at task management, has due dates, owners. You can put your notes in there, attach documents in there. It's a wonderful tool for virtual assistants. There's several things out there on the market like that. And then having some type of daily communication channel outside of text messaging. I think text messaging is a personal thing, so keep it more business. And we use something called Voxer, which is an app on your phone that works kind of like a walkie-talkie app. So if I need something, I just use the Voxer, and then when I'm on the clock, I'm able to go check my messages from that client, and everything's right there that they need for the day, and that works really well. And then of course there's an SOS channel. Like if they need something immediately, they can call you. You're not going to not be unavailable if they need something that comes up, but that doesn't happen very often. So I think that's very, very important. And then the onboarding process, when you onboard a new client, is also extremely important. Having that dedicated 30, 60, 90-day check-in, just like a corporation would, having start, stop, continue conversations. And that goes both ways, being able to set that up from the beginning and let your client know, I want the feedback, and I also want to be able to provide you feedback on what's going well and what I need. Just having that upfront sets the foundation. And when virtual assistants do this and come into an organization like this, they're very, very well respected because they're kind of standing their ground and showing their professionalism. But B, it also adds the longevity of their relationship. And I see those client virtual assistant contracts last years as opposed to months.
And I think too, I mean, that really kind of works with any business relationship. Communication is key, right? Whether you're working for somebody full time as a W-2 employee or whether you're doing a virtual assistant like you guys are doing, I mean, any of that, communication is key. I think you have to set up your expectations. And I think in today's business environment, we're seeing that a lot more than we used to because we have different personalities. We have people that have learned in different ways. We have people that have different life experiences. And trying to reach people where they are and where they need to learn and where they need to communicate is a two-way street for sure. And I think that there's an onus on the employee to be as equally upfront as the employer in what they expect or what they need from communications to make those check-ins, and make that relationship successful.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. You said this even before you asked the question. It's probably the most important thing about all of this, being really good at communicating.
How do you guys go about, so say somebody that wants to use a virtual assistant and they're like us, they have a passion for the military because they're military spouses like we are, or
Mhm.
they served in the military, have family in the military. Talk a little bit about how they get on board to use your services. And then we'll talk a little bit about, from the spouse perspective, what they need to do to onboard as well. So we'll start from the customer.
Yeah. So if you're looking for a virtual assistant, we have a placement agency. We found what I heard so much from clients is I've had a bad experience hiring a virtual assistant, and I hear it time and time again, 3, 5 times they've gone through virtual assistants, and that costs a lot of money, and it's a headache, and they just think that virtual assistants don't work. So that's the problem that I really wanted to fix when we decided to open the placement agency. So we have a very in depth consultative approach when a client comes to us, and we learn everything about their business, what they are looking for, the tasks that they need, the personality type that they're going to work with, things like time zones and when they need a virtual assistant to work for them, all the tech and software that they use, that number of hours that they need. And then all those conversations, we really kind of get a good idea of who they are and who they're going to work well with. And at the same time, we really know our virtual assistants. We know they're all different, as I mentioned before. So we know which ones are more analytical versus creative, or more introverted versus extroverted. And we're able to really match them up well. So, what happens after a client comes in and does our discovery process with us? We write a job description that gets approved, and then they interview 2 to 3 virtual assistants directly. We usually nail it the first time, but sometimes it takes a little bit, and then they make the hire, and they can either hire directly or they can hire through our agency. So lots of flexibility and options, and we see a lot of good success there. So it's an
Oh,
option.
that's good. That's good. Now, what about the other way around? So if it's a spouse that's considering this line of work or considering this as a career, where do
Yeah.
they go? Where do they reach out? And keep in mind, if you're listening, I will have links to Molly Rose's website and all that kind of good stuff in the description. But tell us kind of what the process looks like if somebody wants to jump in and start.
Yes. So virtualassistantacademy.com is our training academy. And like I said, it has the business side and the tech side. And then we also have a community with it. So you're not left on your own. I truly mean it when I say we're here with you when you to get your first client, your second client, your 10th client down the road. That's the community that we've created, whether you're a part of the agency or not. So you can enroll in the program and start right away. And then we do an onboarding call with you once you're finished to kind of get you up to speed and make sure your online presence is ready, your one sheet is ready, you have your service offerings to start sharing with others, and kind of give you some fast start tips to start kind of getting your name out there, even within your own network, because your network probably needs you.
Probably, right? I
I'm
don't think
telling
there's
you,
anybody around today
it
that couldn't
doesn't.
use a little
Yeah.
help at least somewhere, right?
Yes.
No
Yeah.
company says, "Here's more, please do less." It
I
doesn't
know.
it doesn't
No.
really work that way.
No. No. No.
Talk a little bit about, are you guys getting any traction with military programs? Are you getting any help from the military pointing to folks? Are you working through TAP offices? I mean, we're all inside the military
I
because clearly
know.
there's going to be listeners all over the globe, right?
Yes.
The website is one avenue, but how else are you working with the military for these programs?
So we've partnered with a few AFRCs that are recommending us. We need to start getting better at that. So if anyone's listening and has some ins, let me know. We've looked at MyCAA, but it's really hard to get into that, but that's an effort that we're working through. But right now we're working just getting our name out there within organizations and getting it going. I see this as such an easy promising in for military spouses that it frustrates me that we're not everywhere yet, but we're working on it.
And I think it's a great program, and it certainly serves a need. And
Hmm.
so I applaud your efforts for just making it happen because, a lot of times that's really all it takes. It takes 2 seconds to give a darn,
Yeah,
And yeah.
I never thought it would go to where it is. We've certified 150 virtual assistants. I'd say 80 to 85% of them are military spouses, just by word of mouth and getting them going. So it's a lot of jobs.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So yeah, for those of you that are listening that are in the military, coming out of the military, have spouses in the military, or I would even say children in the military, because a lot of military people have kids that are growing up and getting to the age to be able to do some of this. And certainly moving around, I moved around a lot as a kid, not for military reasons, but just because we moved around a lot when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And, it is difficult, and it's difficult to put down roots, and it's hard to find a job, and it's hard to find a job that you can keep through moves. So I highly recommend that you give this a try, give it a listen. If you have questions, I'm sure Molly Rose is more than happy to answer any of those.
Yes. I hang out on Instagram, so Molly Rose Speed. If anyone wants to direct message me, it's an easiest way to get to me.
There you go. There you go. Well, Molly Rose, if you want to leave everybody with a good parting thought, parting message, what would you tell folks?
I think we all have a choice on how we're going to experience life. And when we're military spouses, we get put in these positions, good, bad, or indifferent, that we kind of have to give up our identity in some regard. And I think that we can choose to do that differently and reframe that story. And I think this is an amazing opportunity to do that, to create a career around your life, not a life around your career.
Very good. And those are great words to live by, too. We talk a lot about work-life balance. It matters. It really, really does.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Molly Rose, thank you so much for your time today. For those of you listening, we look forward to having you listen to another edition of this podcast. In the meantime, all of Molly Rose's contact information will, of course, be in the explanation, and we look forward to hosting you guys again. Thanks for listening.